Hi, welcome to the Anthony and Todd Show, a weekly podcast that critiques and memes music. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka my favorite Tool album is Ænima. And I'm joined by my ever-attentive co-host, my best friend, my pal, my amigo, my drug, Vincent.
AKA, didn't Slipknot die in Suicide Squad?
Yeah, very underused character.
Because all he knows is ropes.
Yeah. He was exactly used as much as he should be, let's be honest.
What he's going to do, tie Joker up in a knot?
So what are we fighting? We're fighting this paranormal, other-dimensional witch who can summon demons. I got fucking ropes, man. Let's do this shit.
He just throws a lasso. That's it. This is episode 101. God damn it.
101 Dalmatians.
I've done 100 episodes of these. Past 100 episodes. Yeah. I don't know how I'm still alive. I think at some point I would have died during one of these episodes. Like today. I don't feel good today, so I might die during this one. This is episode 101 of the Anthony and Todd Show, an episode we would like to call We Are Not. Be Kind, Rewind.
That movie's. I feel like that movie gets more hate than it.
I really like it. I like Be Kind, Rewind. Today we're going over Purple Mountain's debut and only record at this point.
I feel like
only record that will ever exist, probably. Yeah. Hopefully. Purple Mountains. We're going to go over Tool's 1996 record, Ænima. Yeah. Slipknot's We Are Not Your Kind, and Slaves, the Velvet Ditch EP. Before we start today's theme song, I don't know yet because I didn't make it. We're doing this in post today, so hopefully it's not live. It's in post, so hopefully it's a good song.
We'll do it post.
Just a reminder that if we get 1,000 subscribers at youtube.com/The Anthony and Todd Show by the end of the year, I'll have to dye my hair blue. Also, if we get money on the Patreon, especially $25, we'll review whatever album you want. You get to pick an album. $25 for an album of your choosing we'll review.
Better make sure it's not Captain Beefheart's.
Yeah, better make sure it's not anything trash. It better be something holy like Iggy Azalea. At least that's what I read in the comments section, that we must respect her and that we're racist for calling out the fact that she's potentially a racist.
Yeah. We're close-minded because we don't like her music.
Okay, are you ready to go over this new Purple Mountains? I don't know how to describe. This is a weird circumstance because David Berman tragically died last week, and I've heard a lot of great things about his music, and I've never been able to check it out. And this new Purple Mountains album is his last studio album, and it recently came out, and I wanted to check it out because I've heard a lot of great things over the last couple of weeks about his music, and I just wanted to see why people commended him so much. And it's easy to see why on this new release why people enjoyed his music so much, because this one studio album, this solo not solo but more like a solo, at least in writing, venture, after being part of the Silver Jews for I think about the course of 15 years, I think is when he was part of the Silver Jews. After taking a break since I think 2008 is when the last Silver Jews album came out, coming to terms of losing his mom and being in a divorce, and the long treachery of this album's creation, which I suggest you look up and research how this album was made, because it's really random and I can't really describe it. It's more something I just think you should research on your own, because this album kind of went through a couple phases of existence. And yeah, going past this, we get this 10-track, 44-minute, I think, masterpiece of both self-deprecation and also self-acceptance, which is the weirdest combination that doesn't make any sense how it exists, but it works. We get shades of country and indie rock being blended together with this poetic nature that I don't know how this balance is corrected so well. You get moments like That's Just the Way I Feel, where in the opening lines he talks about he's sick of his own shit and it's finally find time to fuck himself, which is an odd thing to hear, I think, a week after his death.
Yeah.
But I think just the opening, how he's almost come to terms with his own shit, and he's finally able to like laugh it off a little bit. It's actually pretty surprising in the fact that he's able to be so self-deprecating but so able to poke the fun out of himself, and it's not this constant ditch of just drudge of just emotion or just like self-loathing, because it is a self-loathing album, but it is in this weird way where it's all about kind of coming to the terms of accepting yourself. And by the time when this album does conclude maybe I'm the only one for me, he does kind of finally accept himself in the way that maybe he's the only person. As long as he accepts himself, maybe everything will be okay in the world.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of like mindset where in order to start correcting a problem, you have to recognize there's a problem and accept that you have it.
Yeah.
And kind of come to terms of being able to live with yourself if you're not able to fix it, so you can actually make progress. Because you're just constantly like shitting on yourself for having a problem, you're never going to be able to get over it, because you'll just be constantly making yourself worse.
Yeah. We get weird moments like All My Happiness Is Gone, where he's talking about his wife and him kind of separating and how he'll never be happy ever again. But it's done in such a beautiful way that the pain kind of doesn't dredge. The catchiness of the track outweighs the pain in a sense, to where at a point I've been singing this hook all day and I haven't even thought about the fact that it's attached to a man who is at almost the brink of his life and he's just in pain. We get moments like I love being my mother's son, which is done in such a simple way, but it's so honest about the fact that he just misses his mom, misses the fact that she isn't in his life anymore, that the true honesty, which bleeds across this entire record, just shines through, is that he's genuine to himself. It doesn't need to be anything more than, I really miss being my mom's son, and being there for me in my times of my lowest, she was always there for me. And it makes sense in that context of, I feel like any other artist that would attempt to do this track, it would come off as the cheesiest thing. Yeah. But for him, it works as this true ballad to his mother and how much he missed the relationship that they had. Other moments like She's Making Friends, I'm Turning Stranger, where he talks about how he keeps on making himself into a stranger, but at the same time becoming weirder and weirder by his wife keeps on making new friends at all these various locations, but he just keeps on being this old, mysterious old man. And it's really interesting, that dynamic, because it's a lot about isolation, and that bleeds into the last track, Maybe I'm the Only One for Me, where we're getting all these different shades of how he's alone in this world, but maybe that's okay. Yeah. Maybe in this one brief instance, that's okay because he found himself over the course of this project, and maybe he doesn't need to be the life party, or maybe he doesn't need to be anything more than himself, and maybe that's just okay.
Yeah, they have again one of my favorite, not one of my favorites, but a really good one is Margaritas at the Mall, where it's kind of looking a little more outward at just kind of how empty and bleak the world seems to be nowadays, and the idea of like, how is the world going to move on when God's quiet now? Yeah, like if there's no more words from God, like what the fuck do we do now?
Yeah. And what do? We drink margaritas
at the mall.
Apparently a lot of them, because he lists off multiple colors. Yeah. And all the different flavors.
There's a lot. Have you ever been to like a margarita like joint?
No.
So many fucking margarita types. You go to like a regular bar, it's like one or two. You go to a place that like specializes in margaritas, you're gonna fucking die if you try to drink them all.
Yeah, but I think the honesty and the self-acceptance and the fact that this thing is so depressing but so happy at the same time, the fact that this thing is so folky and twangy but able to be so synthetic with some of the synth lines that are just bright and cheery and also very mystical. I like all the aspects of this album, how they just blend together in this one quirky nature that truly decide why David Berman was a great musician and why he deserves to be honored for his legacy, because if he made music like this across his whole entire career, I feel like he deserves to be honored. It's sad that we didn't get to see anything past this, and he was supposed to be going on a tour sometime, I think at the end of August, which is now canceled after the time of his death. But
I just like this album, how listenable it is. Yeah. Even though some of my favorite like anti-folk and like folk sounding music like AJJ and Mountain Goats and fuck, I had one in the back of my head and now it's Father John Misty. Yeah. With like that singer-songwriter folky type stuff is even my favorite albums. I have trouble listening to the whole thing, and that's more on me. It's just, this is not a type of music that I can listen to for long extended periods of time if I'll just naturally get bored of it because it's just not my usual thing. I could listen to this album on repeat. I did. And it was really good. Every single time I got through the whole thing, no problems. It was just, it's so listenable and so just well structured and made where it carries you through so easily.
Yeah. Keep in mind though, scores are futile, meaningless. Right now I'm feeling a big fat 8 to 9. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, 8.5.
Yeah. And moving past that, are you ready? Do you have the tools for success? Do you have the anime for success?
No.
Okay, let's switch now.
I still haven't gotten all of Dragon Ball on DVD. That's the only anime you need to succeed.
Yeah, time to go over Tool's 1996 release, Ænima.
Their sophomore album.
After... It was already a week and I forgot the
Undertow.
Undertow. I don't know how I remember that. How I didn't remember that.
I don't know.
I think I'm weak, Jonathan. I may die during this review.
I think you're a useful idiot.
Oh, God damn it. Let's get into this review, Jonathan. Tell us about Ænima.
Ænima. It's the sophomore album of Tool. We talked about Tool a little bit in our review of Undertow. If you want to hear more about...
Actually, a lot of it, because it was a whole entire review.
But we talked about the history of Tool a little bit in Undertow. This was their follow-up to that album 3 years later. 3 years after Undertow, they released this one. And then... Yeah, that's pretty much all you really need to know.
Yeah, it's widely regarded as probably the best Tool album.
Yeah, which I find odd.
Yeah, because going over this, it's a longer Tool album. It's around 90 minutes. Whereas the last one was 69 minutes, which is the perfect length. I think all Tool albums should be 69 minutes long.
69 minutes, exactly, every time.
69 minutes, perfect length. 68 minutes, terrible. 70 minutes, terrible. 69 minutes, great. But... I think for this it's longer, and I think the interludes had a lot more experimentation. I think like certain tracks have a lot more experimentation to them, but I feel like overall it's the same lyricism wise and same personality wise, and I think why a lot of the production goes a little bit harder. I feel like the drums across this are way more eclectic than the last one and stand out a lot more in my opinion. I think this thing meshes pretty well as an album. I like the use of a lot of interludes because it makes a lot of this stand out, but I also think this is really hard to sit through because it's 90 minutes of material and it doesn't really stand out. Listening to this a week after their first one doesn't really sit for me that well as just being able to last through the entire release. I think moments like
Eier von Satan, that one?
Yeah, I think moments like that where it's completely this weird German, loud, eclectic moment.
Or like clearly like backwards play, like instrumentation, and that's You asked me like when we started this Tool series, like we were originally only going to do one of the Tool albums, and I decided, fuck, let's just do them all.
I think after this we should only do this one. I think I'm tooled out after this one.
No, we have to at least hit like Lateralis. Like that one has like a lot of like importance in the Tool discography because of their like use of mathematics while making it.
Wait, are they gonna teach me how to square things? Like what the fuck?
I don't know. It's based on like a lot of the Fibonacci numbers and sequences and shit like that.
The fib?
The defib. The defib.
They're gonna defeat me after I die during this review.
But yeah. So when you asked me, I originally said their first album. Personally, that's the one I like the most. With this album, it is very long by comparison to all of their other ones. And while it does have some really cool moments of experimentation, especially on Die Eier von Satan and what was the other one that I really like? 46 and 2 and like some of those ones. There's like a lot of experimentation. You start getting the ideas that they would like start pushing for Lateralis with like this very calculated, almost mathematical like understanding of like how to switch to song structures. Yeah. And you start getting a lot of that, but it seems way too meandering at times, or it just seems like they're trying a lot and they're not focusing it down. It makes sense as the in-between between their starter album and Lateralis, but like it doesn't feel like it was toned down. They're just kind of leaving everything on the table, all their thoughts and experimentations, which at times is cool, but also it makes this album kind of just last too long. There are like great moments on here. There's Jimmy, which is like a really good song. That's one of their like most well-known ones. There's Hooker with a Penis, which is like a great rallying against people who claim you've sold out.
Yeah.
By just saying like, we made a record and we sold a record. We inherently sold out the moment we did that. There is no man to give into, because by making any music to sell, you are already a part of the system.
Yeah.
Which I think is a weird like perspective on you don't get much. Is basically like, we didn't sell out. It's like, no, we did sell out. We've sold out since the very beginning. By doing what we do, we've sold out. That's something that a lot of bands wouldn't just readily admit to.
Yeah.
But then also on this album, you have some of their most, I guess, dated sounds.
Yeah.
Songs and sounds that like are still good, but like are very clearly of their time. And we talked about Undertow. We talked about how it aged very well.
Yeah, I think the thing that aged so well about it was its lyricism, and I think this thing, it has a similar lyrical palette, but I heard it last week.
Yeah.
And I'm a week forward in the future, 3 weeks in the future.
Yeah.
1 2 week is 1 2 years. 1 2 week is 3 years.
2 years. But yeah, like you have Eulogy, which sounds very much of like its era, even though it still used a lot of like very strange rhythm and tempo shifts.
Yeah.
But like what it's shifting between is just things that have been done pretty well.
Yeah.
Covered in that time frame. There's moments on here where they just kind of sound like Chevelle.
Yeah.
Which is not always a compliment.
It is if you're the SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 soundtrack.
Look, Chevelle has some fucking good songs, but they also have some,
Yeah, on the SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 soundtrack.
right. But they also have
Not
some
joking
garbage.
about that.
I know. I played the SmackDown versus Raw games. I don't like watching wrestling, but the games are fun. Fuck you. Games are fun.
They have it.
I know you have them.
Actually, I don't have 2008. I think I sold that at one point in time, but I did. I have 2007, 2006.
They're good.
2008 is not good. 2007 is good.
Yeah. But they're fun games. Fuck you. But you're off topic. Yeah, so
When are we on topic?
never. But just, yeah, as a whole, this album, while it's interesting and while it has some truly great moments, and there's moments that like kept me hooked throughout the whole thing, there's also a lot of moments where I just kind of wandered a little bit, waiting to be brought back in by one of those moments.
Yeah. I think
Which-
I literally have the same description where it's just like, it feels like it's just, compared to their debut, it just felt, their debut was just so tightly packaged, and all the ideas felt explored in that time frame. And while I feel like it did meander a little bit, but it felt compressed in what it needed to be. It spans out way too much, and while it does switch up a lot more, and I feel like you said mathematical, and that almost kind of made me think formulaic. While a lot of these time signatures, I do feel a lot more, or not time signatures, time changes seem a lot more gelatinous instead of animalistic, like the last one did. I do think it's just, it feels a bit predictable.
Yeah.
In that gelatinous, I don't know. It's more like a Jello mold, so it's like, yeah, it moves around a bit, but it's still in that
Yeah.
mold.
It's not as drastic as it was in the first album.
Yeah. And I think that's really all I got to say.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind that I'll scores a few tomatoes. Right now I'm feeling it's a Tool album out of 10.
Yeah. This was released the year of my birth, so it's a 10 out of 10.
It was released in my year of my birth too.
Yeah, but you don't matter.
You know who doesn't matter?
Not anymore, they don't. Slipknot.
Time to go over the latest Slipknot album. We're Not Your Kind. Slipknot is a band. I think Jonathan can explain Slipknot better than me.
Slipknot is a new metal / extreme metal 9-piece band that started in the late 1990s in Iowa.
Will you explain that? Just made it seem like the nerdiest fucking shit ever. Okay, extreme metal, worst genre name ever.
It's a I don't know. The thing about extreme metal is it's like,
I'm not saying the genre is bad. I'm saying the name for
Yeah,
it
the
just
name-
sounds terrible.
it's a terrible name, but like it's also a name that's used to encompass. It's like one of those like umbrella genres, where like there's a bunch of like forms of it, and they just kind of collected them as like, this is extreme metal. It's like,
Yeah.
you got your black metal, you got your like Teutonic thrash, and you got your death metal, and they're all extreme. They're extreme metal. It's kind of a dumb genre name, but
It's just like, it's stupid. It just
Yeah,
it sounds like a 10-year-old created, because metal is like hardcore enough
I mean,
as
it was part of new metal, so they had the mentality of a 10-year-old back then. So
Speaking of mentality of new metal, I bought a Limp Bizkit CD the other day for
Why?
$1. It was $1.
That's fair.
It was a good purchase. Quality purchase.
I guess. Anyway, Slipknot, started in the 90s. 9-piece extreme metal outfit. Originally not fronted by Corey Taylor, who's been their frontman ever since their debut album.
Is that it?
There's a lot you could say about the band. The band's notable for their extremely layered sound that they had in their first albums, where they mix so many different layers and levels of percussions and guitar work with weird sampling and synths and things like that going over. It's a very... Their first album, as much as I don't enjoy metal anymore, I used to listen to Slipknot a lot. In my high school years, until the very end, I was really into Slipknot. I was really into metal, and then as I got older, I kind of graduated and moved on to punk. And I actually want to talk about why when it comes to talking about kind of the lyricism of this album and the previous ones. But so I used to really enjoy their sound, and their first album, going back, is still a very well-made album.
You want to know how my sister describes that album?
How?
It encompasses more than just metal. It goes across everything from elevator music to rock in that form, and it's meant to be more than just that.
Yeah, it's a great album in that regards because it covers so much, but still kind of firmly places itself in the metal genre. But then it's it pretty much has these branching out things that try to dip their toes in every other genre, but still being circulated around metal and extreme metal. And then Iowa is a very heavy, aggressive album, which probably was their most aggressive. Was it Vermilion Part 3, Chapter 3, or whatever the fuck, their third album.
That's another bad name.
They have really bad album names. Their second one's literally just called Iowa. We get it, you're from Iowa. Who gives a shit? It's Iowa. But it's probably them at their, I don't want to say softest, but it's their most soft. It's their most listenable.
Yeah.
They had a lot more acoustic moments on there than most of their records. And then their fourth album, All Hope Is Gone, was probably them at their most forward thinking. They were kind of leaving behind just anger for the sake of anger, which is always what they were actually focusing a little more outward of societal issues and trying to actually mean something. And then after their longtime bassist and one of their founding members, Paul Gray, died, they released their fifth album, which is The Gray Chapter, which is more of a tribute to him and the sorrow that the band was in. And then they released this album, where they have made every form of musical regression that you can do as a band. Every song on here just literally sounds like they pulled pieces from their previous works and tried to remake them, but with none of the passion and none of the raw aggression that they used to be able to hold.
This just seems like the most paint by numbers album I've heard all year. I think this is comparable to Amigos' album. It just seems so shoot in. Every track seems to me like the same track. I read a snippet of a description of this album, and I don't know which member said it, but they're moving away from singles on this release into a full album. They want to focus on the whole entire album experience. And listening to this is not a full album experience. This is a bunch of tracks put together. There's no layout. This thing, I think with metal, importantly, you need your breaks, you need your moments, you need your build-ups. Even tracks alone, it doesn't feel like we're being built up. It just feels like we're being just screamed at.
Yeah, it's, like you said, it's just screamed at. And that reminded me of, what I was saying about, the lyricism. Is, their early albums were anger for the sake of anger. And while that has, a place... that back then was backed up by actual aggression, and it was backed up by an animalistic rage that you could just feel radiating off the songs. You have lyrics from their first album I want to slit your throat and fuck the wound. That's obviously super angry, super pissed, super edgy, obviously.
Yeah.
And then the most memorable line off of this album is I'm fucked up but I make it look good, which congratulations, that's a fucking Hot Topic t-shirt quote. You've fallen so fucking far from grace. And it's just kind of the whole thing of this album is it just feels like they're desperately trying to cling on to what they used to be. And literally every single track I listen to on here, with one exception being, what was that one called? Spiders. Sounds pretty much like a painful ripoff of a previous song of theirs. I described this album to you as Greta Van Fleet, but they did it to themselves. Whereas Greta Van Fleet literally just sounds like a desperate attempt and a very well calculated attempt to sound like Led Zeppelin, but missing any of the passion or energy and just feeling like a pale imitation. But this is Slipknot doing that to themselves with their own previous albums. They just feel like a pale, calculated attempt to just sound like a Slipknot album.
Yeah. This is a plus hour of material we're getting.
And I was done with it after like 15 minutes.
I was done with it after the first track. Yeah. Because there's nothing unique here. It sounds like any new metal act.
Yeah.
At least Limp Bizkit had some class.
Yeah,
Slipknot doesn't have any class.
But like being serious, part of like multiple rivalries, most notably, not really a rivalry. Their fans were in a rivalry with Mushroomhead fans. And one thing I'll say for Mushroomhead is they're edgy as shit, and they did a whole like multiple like double digits almost like group members and all wear masks and shit. But they're like industrial metal with used a lot of like experimentation in their albums. Like their music is like every album is like very distinct from the last one. It's not this paint by numbers shit that we're getting on this album.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's just so bad about this is it feels...
At points, I thought it was an Avenged Sevenfold album.
And I can't even blame you for that.
I like got lost. It's one of those it's one of those albums where I listen to it and then just whoosh, it just flies over my head. Like nothing on this album actually relates or is memorable by any means, and it's hard for me to talk about it because it fails at being an album, in my opinion, because I just can't relate to anything going on. And I think it's probably the fact that some of it is because I'm not huge into metal, but that doesn't really have to mean, because I feel like music is music, and if I don't relate to something, I can still at least find the good in it. I can't find any good in this album.
Yeah, I think the only reason I have so much to say is because I did listen to this band so much, and I can remember like the distinct moments that they're pulling from. Yeah. And when I listened to this album, like the first 2 times, I couldn't remember it, so I finally had to like force myself to sit down and focus on it, and I finally realized it's because everything just reminded me of something else. So when I tried to remember this album, I just remembered those original songs.
Yeah, I think we're done at this point. But keep in mind, all scores are futile and meaningless. Right now, I'm feeling a big old out of 10.
Out of 10.
Yeah,
I'm feeling.
Do you want the whistle? I don't. You probably should it.
Yeah, I'm feeling. Feeling 2. I think
2.
Feeling a 2.
That's a big old Migos score, so it's pretty comparable. Okay, so would you say Slipknots are slaves to their former selves?
I think they slipped into a velvet ditch.
Ooh, that's a good one. Time to move on to the latest Slaves album. Or no, EP. The Velvet Ditch.
The Velvet Ditch. All right, so Slaves is a UK-based met punk. I don't know why I just said metal, 'cause Slipknot was the one we just did. Punk. Switching into punk like I did.
Yeah.
Punk 2-piece. From the UK, they've been active since the early 2010s. They've released like 4 albums. They recently just did some production on that Slow Tie record.
Nothing great about Britain.
That we both really love. The Velvet Ditch is their newest EP. There's only 4 tracks on it, which are One More Day Won't Hurt, It Makes Me Sick, The titular The Velvet Ditch, and Little Know I Learned. The Velvet Ditch is a nickname given to, I think it's like Memphis. It's like a important part.
It's a state. I thought it was to like Iowa or something like that.
Yeah, it's an important part from Iowa.
Not Iowa. Iowa's Slipknot. God damn it, my mind's stuck
Tennessee,
on
maybe. It's important for like blues and like bluegrass. It's like that's all that you need to know, is that it's a reference to a vocal area that's like really important to the music of like blues and bluegrass.
Yeah.
This EP is not a whole lot really to say about it, because it's very clearly the band kind of just playing around with some new sounds.
Yeah, each track is different from the last in style. Because you open up with One More Day Won't Hurt, and it's very mix of hardcore, punk, and hip hop.
Yeah, they're very clearly pulling from our work with Slow Tie and like just kind of doing that on their own this
And
time.
pulling a Show Me the Body.
Pulling a Show Me the Body. They literally just sound like a British slang,
So-
like sounding Show Me the Body.
Show Me the Body, but with slow tie.
Yeah. Which is cool.
I think it works in talking about how one more day of doing this or doing drugs won't hurt you. Being addicted to crack won't cause any pains as long as it's only for this day. Or being addicted to coke only long as it's just for this one day is okay. But I like that. I like that.
Just one day and then one more and then one more.
I like that sense of hip hop and how it's
Yeah.
able to blend through. And I think they actually walk that line pretty gracefully in how they're able to blend, because it doesn't feel like I've heard this particular style of it before. While I'm able to make comparisons and stuff, it doesn't feel like
it's not just like doing the exact same thing. It's just taking influence and doing something new with it.
Yeah. You get moments like the Velvet. You get moments like the Velvet Ditch, which is a weird kind of slow, almost bluegrass style of track.
It literally, I feel like there's something jokey about it though, especially if the opening, like, can I get a yeehaw? And then you just hear the other guy, yeehaw!
And it's meant to be more about how the Velvet Ditch is something you can't escape from. It's more about where you come from is getting harder and harder to escape from because of things like gentrification, how they take this music venue and destroy and replace it with hotels, and how it's because of things like gentrification, it's getting harder and harder to leave where you come from. You're kind of almost stuck there.
Yeah. And then you get the second track, It Makes Me Sick, which is just a nice, just pure hardcore punk. Something they don't really do. We didn't really talk about what they usually sound like. Slaves is they just sound like a punk tinged version of like the Black Keys.
Yeah.
They take the general like 2-piece punk like element and just throw a lot of punk aesthetic to it. When we did the 10 tracks to get you into modern punk, we talked about another punk 2-piece, which was John Times 2, but they are very different from this because they are much more machinery and like they sound almost like just machine driven.
Yeah.
So how fast and how aggressive they are able to take just those two instruments and just push them. This one, normally they just kind of sound like they're much more thought out. They're more slow moving, but they're still like kind of got that punk edge to it that works really well. But then you have this album, it's the first 2 tracks, the second one being just pure hardcore, just kind of pushing the aggression much further than they have in any of their previous work.
Yeah.
And then you end with When Will I Learn, which the first time I listened to it, I thought I accidentally put a Cage the Elephant song into my playlist.
Yeah, no, that's what I got. That's what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking Cage the Elephant. I was thinking Arctic Monkeys. But it's that like slow, almost kind of like lounge, melodic type of line. But I think they drive it really well because it's more of like, when will I actually learn from my own mistakes?
Yeah.
When will I keep on stop? When will I actually stop and think about what I'm actually doing with my life and learn? Yeah. I think this EP is more about where they're going with these sounds and more just fucking around with them than being good. Or not being good.
It's not like, there's no sense of structure to this. Yeah. There's not supposed to be. It's just, every song on here is just a band that has a very well-established sound, a very well-established reputation within their local punk community. Just trying something new.
Yeah.
They're playing around. They're just seeing what they can do and where they might be able to go in the future. And so that makes me kind of curious to see what their next album ends up being like.
Yeah.
I think this is a good kind of teaser for what things are to come.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see what it is because I think the material on here, the mix of hardcore punk, the mix of hip hop, even the weird bluegrass segments, I think they could work into a future album, and I think it would actually blend pretty well. Because I think as many different styles on this, it comes across pretty flawlessly, and it would just effortlessly kind of works together, and the overall mood and the blend, the overarching move and how it flows across the entire EP. Keep in mind that I'll score a futile meaningless. Right now I'm feeling a nice little punk EP out of 10.
Yeah, this is a pretty nice little punk EP, little 7-inch out of 10.
Yeah. Moving past that, that's it for this week's episode of the Anthony and Todd Show, episode 101. And if you want to follow the Anthony and Todd Show, you can do on social media at Anthony and Todd on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you want to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/the Anthony and Todd Show. Again, 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I'll dye my hair blue. And if you want to support us monetarily on Patreon, patreon.com/the Anthony and Todd Show. Again, $25 to review an album you're choosing. And I think that's about it.
A shameless plug of our other show.
Is It a Film? You can find it at youtube.com/Is It a Film.
If you want to hear us talk about movies and shit.
And Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, also at Is It a Film. And until next time, guys, I'm Vincent.
I'm Jonathan.
And see ya, boyos.
Yeehaw.